on Friday, August 28th at the Virginia Tech Center for the Arts in Blacksburg. In addition to the regular and student ticket options, there's also a limited number of VIP tickets available. This package includes a meet and greet with Shankar Vedantam, premium seating, and refreshments. Tickets and more information are available on our website, radioiq.org.
Support for Radio IQ comes from Baseline Solar, offering grid-tied, battery backup, and off-grid options. Southwest Virginia's local solar company since 2008. BaselineSolar.com. And from the Floyd Country Store, home of Appalachian experiences, live music and dancing, Friday night jamborees, Americana afternoons, and Sunday music jams, homemade food and local crafts. FloydCountryStore.com.
Expect scattered showers and storms today and first few days of the work week. Highs today in the mid-70s to upper 80s. Rain letting up tonight. Lows bottom out in the low 60s to near 70 in Danville and Richmond. Another chance Tuesday for showers and storms, especially along and south of Route 460. Stronger storms possible. Highs in the upper 70s to low 80s for most. More showers and storms expected Wednesday. Blacksburg has 70 degrees, 74 in Roanoke, Lynchburg, and Stanton. Charlottesville has 75, 78 in Fredericksburg and Richmond.
What's driving up the costs to buy a house? And does AI mean the end of open internet?
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Odoo.com, offering integrated programs for sales, customer relationship management, inventory, and other business operations, designed to work together as a customizable software suite. Odoo, all your business on one platform.
From Marketplace in Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams. The latest news on mortgage rates is not great. According to Freddie Mac, the average interest on a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage edged up again last week to 6.66%. That puts the cost of borrowing to buy a home at the highest level we've seen in a year. Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman explains what's going on.
1 year ago, the 30-year mortgage was just above 6.5%, almost exactly where it is today. And a lot of economists were confident rates were headed down.
You know, I also expected mortgage rates to come down. So I guess I would have to take the stand that it was reasonable.
Chen Zhao at Redfin was right for a while. By February, the rate had dipped below 6% as the job market weakened, inflation fell, and it seemed likely the Fed would begin cutting rates to stimulate growth. But then the Iran war disrupted global oil supplies.
And that was a shock that sort of came out of left field.
Oil prices and inflation soared, and paradoxically, the U.S. economy came out of its slow growth funk.
The labor market has really turned around. The AI boom is actually providing a lot of resilience, but it's also providing inflationary pressure.
Pressure that's driving investors to demand higher interest on long-term debt like mortgages. For the housing market, stronger economic growth is a double-edged sword, says Douglas Porter at the Bank of Montreal.
It can help employment. It can help the potential home buyer have a little bit more confidence in making that plunge. But of course, it does put upward pressure on interest rates,
making homes less affordable, driving some buyers out of the market. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
Let's do the numbers. Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ futures are up in the 0.2 to 1 2/10% range, with the Dow future up 618 points. The 10-year Treasury yield is down at 4.68%. And Asian markets closed mixed following news the U.S. intervened last week to help support the Japanese yen as the currency fell to its lowest level against the dollar in almost 4 decades. Japan's Nikkei ended the day down almost 1%. For context on why the U.S. stepped in, here's Julia Coronado, founder of Macro Policy Perspectives.
Japan has long had a huge fiscal deficit, right? And for years and years, that didn't matter. But it is starting to matter because Japan has inflation. It's okay to run deficits when interest rates are zero. When the government actually has to pay interest on the debt, it becomes a burden really fast. So people are losing confidence in Japan. And the reason that's important is that they're the biggest buyer of treasuries. So if they can't buy treasuries because the yen is devaluing, then our interest rates go up.
That was economist Julia Coronado.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab. At Schwab, investors get choices ranging from self-directed investing to full-service wealth management all in one place. Learn more at schwab.com.
Google's search in AI mode is gaining in popularity, but the way AI search works is causing growing concerns that the World Wide Web might be becoming less open. Marketplace's Megan McCarty-Carino has been covering web traffic and the growing role of AI in search and joins me now. Hi, Megan.
Hey, good to be here.
When Google first came out, it was supposed to be this gateway to the internet that many people had never experienced at that point. But how is Google's use of AI in search rolling out?
Well, AI summaries are appearing, at the top of Google searches now, I guess, for, one sort of outside study showed that in the last year, it's gone from 15% of searches to more around 40% of searches. And it is the sort of global default.
So how is that impacting those sites that relied on Google traffic for those click-throughs?
We've seen some numbers from publishers, declining clicks on their website. Business Insider, for instance, reported that their traffic is down 35% year over year. I've seen a number of other, major publishers, Huffington Post, Washington Post, reporting pretty massive decreases in traffic over the last several years since, kind of generative AI became a way that people search for information.
And what's Google saying to all this?
Well, Google, in a blog post last year, has sort of disputed some of the most alarming reports about traffic losses. They say they're still sending billions of users to sites. The traffic has not really decreased. They argue that, this outside research, some of which has shown that 75% of users don't click through to a site when they get an AI summary, that is too pessimistic compared to its own data. And that they still include links that send users to websites in those AI summaries.
Like you mentioned, a lot of businesses rely on Google traffic. I saw a number that Wikipedia says its human visitor traffic was down like 8% over the last year. What is the ultimate cost of continuing to lose it?
For some of the big companies, some of the major publishers, Google has sort of created profiles where if you subscribe to that publication, it will show up in the AI summary. And many of them have been making deals with AI companies to license their content. We've seen deals like that from the New York Times, the AP, Reuters, this kind of stuff. But I think for smaller businesses, for smaller, publishers, they may not have the scale to be able to make a big deal with an AI company to show up in generative searches. And so I think that's where the real pain will be in sort of discovery of those sites and the ability to monetize from advertising on those sites.
What are some of the solutions these businesses are considering, since clearly this is happening?
Well, there's been one sort of proposed solution from this internet infrastructure company, Cloudflare, which instead of the monetization happening from the user click-throughs, that the monetization happens from the bots crawling those sites. So it's just making for a more fractured and less open internet than the one that we have known.
Marketplace correspondent Megan McCarty-Carino. You can hear her on Marketplace Tech. Megan, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams with the Marketplace Morning Report from APM American Public Media.
Hi, it's Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. You may have heard that prices for used vehicles are up. That car you've been thinking about donating to this station?
That car could be worth hundreds of dollars or even more in support.
If you don't need it, donate it. It's easy, it's free to you, and the proceeds help us bring you the news.
Learn more on the station's website.
Go to radioiq.org and click the support tab and select vehicle donation.
You're listening to Radio IQ on WVTF Roanoke, WRIQ Charles City Richmond, WVTU Charlottesville, WVTW Charlottesville, WVTR Marion, WISE FM Wise, WQIQ Spotsylvania, WIUR Lexington, WEHC Emory, HD3 of WURV Richmond, and on 92.5 Richmond and 94.9 Fredericksburg. Radio IQ, a listener-supported community service of Virginia Tech, on your smart speaker and online at radioiq.org.
Welcome to NewsHour from the BBC World Service. I'm Rebecca Kesby. Today, the English and Welsh Football Associations are withdrawing support for FIFA boss Gianni Infantino. It follows his controversial plans, which he's since retracted, to sell shares in the World Cup. His argument had been that football needs cash.
Strengthening the commercial side of the game is the natural next step in this evolution.
Also, the Red Cross pays a rare visit to Myanmar's detained former leader Aung San Suu Kyi. We speak to her son.
I spoke with that delegate earlier today. He confirmed that, and that my mother does appear to be in good health.
And Queen Elizabeth's favourite horse whisperer has died at the age of 91.
I don't know what innately told me to drop my eyes and walk away, but if you stop and think about it, no predator has ever done that. I'm saying I'm not a predator.
First, the news.
BBC News with David Harper. At least 18 people, including 4 soldiers, are reported to have been killed in attacks by gunmen in northwestern Nigeria. Residents in Zamfara say the attackers abducted more than 100 villagers. Women were later released, but around 52 men are reportedly still being held. Chris Iwoko reports from Abuja.
In Zamfara State, residents say the attackers overran a military outpost in Kaswandaji before abducting more than 100 villagers and fleeing into the bush. However, the gunmen later freed women they'd seized. In neighboring Sokoto State, gunmen are said to have spent hours moving from house to house, killing civilians, stealing livestock, and setting a house on fire. Among those killed were reportedly a father and his 2 sons, while hiding inside. Witnesses say 2 other women were also abducted. The authorities have yet to give the account of the incidents.
The English Football Association is set to become the latest governing body to withdraw support for Gianni Infantino's bid for re-election as head of FIFA. The Welsh FA made a similar announcement earlier on Monday. Mr. Infantino is under sustained pressure because of his abandoned plan to sell a stake.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 9 a.m. informal session for Roanoke City Council on Monday, August 3rd, 2026. Council meetings are televised live and replayed on RVTV, Channel 3, on Thursdays at 7 p.m., and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and video streamed through YouTube Live at youtube.com/RoanokeVA. Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. I'm going to ask our Deputy City Clerk, Ms. Webb, to please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Here. Vice Mayor McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Nash.
Here.
Mr. Volleson. Here. Ms. Powers. Mr. Hagan.
Here.
And Mayor Cobb.
Here, and a quorum is present. We have a couple of items for action today involving a number of closed meetings. The first is a communication from my office requesting that council convene in a closed meeting to discuss vacancies on certain authorities, boards, commissions, and committees appointed by the council pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 Code of Virginia as amended. The items or the boards under consideration today for appointments are listed in the agenda. I'll entertain a motion and second. Motion? Second. Thank you. Councilman Volleson, Vice Mayor McGuire. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Here. Vice Mayor McGuire. Aye. I'm sorry, aye. Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the motion passes. The second is a communication from the city attorney requesting that City Council convene a closed meeting to consult with legal counsel regarding a certain legal matter requiring the provision of legal advice by the city attorney concerning a code amendment pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A8 Code of Virginia as amended. I'll entertain a motion and second, please. The motion. Thank you, Councilman Volleson and Vice Mayor McGuire. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Aye. Vice Mayor McGuire.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the motion is adopted. One closed meeting item is being pulled from the agenda for today and will be rescheduled for a later date. Our final item is a walk-on closed meeting request, a communication from the city attorney requesting that council convene in a closed meeting to consult with legal counsel regarding a specific legal matter requiring the provision of legal advice by the city attorney concerning the city's obligations related to federal funds received by the city pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A8, Code of Virginia as amended. I'll entertain a motion and second, please.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Council Members Hagan and Nash. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Aye. Vice Mayor McGuire. Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the motion is adopted. Thank you all. We'll now move into our legislative committee, so I'm going to recess the council meeting and turn it over to Vice Mayor McGuire, who chairs our legislative committee.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure to call to order the, what day is today? August 3rd meeting of the Roanoke City Council Legislative Committee, and I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Hagan.
Here.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Here. Mayor Cobb.
Here.
Mr. Nash.
Here.
Mr. Volleson.
Here.
Ms. Powers. Ms. Appel.
Here.
Mr. Cackness.
Here.
And Chairman McGuire.
Here. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Today, just to kind of kick us off, we are going to, we have on the big screen virtually, we're going to hear from our federal legislative lobbyists, Mr. Clayton Cox and Scott Binkley. I believe we see both of them there. And then I will give a little bit of an update on where we are with our legislative agenda after our most recent public hearing that we had on the 20th. I will, maybe before we hear from our consultants on the television, I want to maybe give an opportunity for Chair Appel to say a few words from the school board side of the work, if you would like.
Sure. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor McGuire and City Council. So just some updates for us regarding timeline. First off, also, Dr. Siebert sends his regrets for not being able to be in attendance today, and thank you to school board member Mr. Cackness for also being able to be in attendance today as our representation from the board. We anticipate our first review of the school board's legislative priorities at our September workshop, which is September 22nd, with an expected adoption date of those the RCPS priorities for October 13th at our October school board meeting. We have our first Policy, Governance, and Legislative Committee meeting of the new fiscal and calendar year, school year tomorrow. And then also we have our annual Take Your Legislator to School Day. That date hasn't been planned yet, but it's typically in late November, kind of leading up to that Thanksgiving break. So, and I think that's something that I know council and also our local representatives always take full advantage of. So, but that is it from us.
Thank you, Ms. Appel. I really appreciate it. I will say more about where we are with our legislative agenda, but I'll turn it over now while we have them to Mr. Cox and Mr. Binkley.
Point of order.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, sir. We need to approve our minutes, do we not?
Yes.
We do need to approve our minutes, and I forwarded, thank you, Ms. Appel, for catching one slight error in the notes, which just attributed a quote from Ms. Turner to Ms. Appel, and I forwarded that to the clerk's office, and so I will make a motion to approve the minutes with that small edit made. And I will ask the clerk to please call the roll. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Mayor Cobb.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Appel. Mr. Cackness. And Chairman McGuire.
Aye. Thank you very much, Mr. Volleson, for catching that. And now I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Cox and Mr. Binkley.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you all, as always. We appreciate the opportunity to provide these updates. So we'll go ahead and move to the next slide to provide a congressional overview. Of course, the big updates in D.C. right now is we're moving very close to August recess, and then to follow August recess, we're looking at campaign season. So the House has left town for their August recess, but before doing so, passed a number of priority bills to fund the government and some other items that had been on their to-do list. So last week passed a continuing resolution through December 4th They passed the NDAA, which is the must-pass defense reauthorization bill. They passed a third reconciliation effort, which included the controversial voter ID bill, the Save America Act, which I'm sure you've been following the back and forth between the White House and Congress related to that. We can come back to that in a second as we move to the Senate. And then they passed a stock trading ban. And so this was a couple weeks ago, before they left town for their August recess. The Senate is still here in Washington, D.C. Just yesterday, they released their text for a continuing resolution that would fund the government through December 11th. This is a little bit different than what the House passed, so they're going to have to go back and forth on a number of provisions that are in there. But of particular interest to the city and to local governments across the board that had been concerned, the Senate released text that came out yesterday includes a provision which would delay the OMB proposed rule related to federal funding and grants, making changes to the grant process that I know that the city had been concerned with. And so again, if that provision were to remain in the continuing resolution, that OMB proposed rule related to federal grants would not take effect for the duration of the continuing resolution. There were a couple other pieces in the Senate continuing resolution that were different than the House version. There was did not include funding for a Trump priority to build a new battleship. And then it included language from Democrats around not extending additional funding for ICE. And I think those few things that I just went over were the result of bipartisan negotiations between Senate Appropriations Chair Susan Collins and then Ranking Member Patty Murray. And I think we'll see those negotiations continue, which leads us to an update on FY27 appropriations. Of course, these continuing resolutions are in place of a budget and normal appropriations packages. And of course, we always like to see those funded in regular order because that's where a number of our funding priorities and our congressionally directed spending requests are included. But I think what would be most likely to happen is that now that the CR text has been released, the hope would be that Senate appropriators can begin negotiating in good faith bipartisan negotiations to get FY27 appropriations bills put together. And then as we end this slide here, as you can see, they're kind of backloading the year to kick the can down the curve until after elections. And I think part of that has to do with the political reality of not wanting to give each other anything to run on, not wanting to kind of boost the appropriators in the other parties. So we will move to the next slide, but we can answer any questions related to these items at the end.
Thank you. Good to be with everybody. Thank you, Scott. Again, we're very pleased to be part of the team here at Roanoke, and I think have made some significant progress that we're very proud of. One piece of legislation to put on your radar, we've discussed this before as being likely to pass. Sure enough, it passed the House and Senate, as you can see, pretty overwhelmingly in a bipartisan nature, which is, I think, notable in this hyper-partisan environment, especially going into a midterm year. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act became law on July 10th after the president said he wouldn't sign it because he wanted the SAVE Act passed or included. And so it went through as what's called a pocket veto, where essentially he doesn't sign it after 10 days, so it does become law. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act is the largest piece of housing legislation in a generation. It essentially focuses on the supply side, has incentives for building more homes, has some new rules for preservation, rural recovery, and I think most important to Roanoke, this will provide the use of what's called CDBG, Community Development Block Grants from HUD, to go towards the actual building of affordable housing. So up to 20% of a future allocation for CDBG funds can be put towards the building of affordable housing. So right now, Roanoke, I believe in their most recent allocation, received 1.8 million. So that would be about $365,000 would be the maximum that could be spent under these rules. It also includes things like the Build Now Act, which creates essentially incentives for local governments to have more open and freer sort of zoning policies, and opens up other avenues and incentives for local governments to provide more affordable housing. It also will create some pilot programs that the Housing and Urban Development that HUD will roll out in the next few months. Those pilot programs will create more incentives, will create special funding allocations for things like commercial to residential conversion, any sort of increase in the housing supply, any sort of changing of old commercial or industrial zoning areas into residential. And essentially, it allows for rehabilitation and incentives in home ownership. The big thing to remember with the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, it was passed and became law 3 weeks ago. So it now moves into the implementation phase. Over the next 6 months to a year, we will see HUD roll out the rules of these programs, what the actual implementation looks like of the bill. So I think stay tuned for more information on our end on how we see the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. But I think it'd be smart for the city to sort of think about how these funds could be used, how they want to do things like commercial to residential conversion, and also some of the preservation and renovation, rehabilitation of older properties. Next slide, please. Looking ahead, one thing we are working on, and we have been working with the city manager's office on, is a visit of trying to get together. We consider this a sort of best practice for local governments, but to have out your representation, your congressional delegation, the folks that are in the regional office. So both of your senators have a regional office in Roanoke. We'll invite also your member of Congress's local team to come out and sort of tour some different projects that Roanoke's working on. We're working with the capital improvement, the CIP office as well. We also want to hear from them. What are their priorities? What are they looking for when it comes to congressionally directed spending for next year? We need to make sure that we're already thinking ahead and aligning ourselves. So we will use this opportunity. It'll be some point during the week of the September 7th. We're circling on some dates with those offices. We'll get back to you and let you know. But basically, we will have them come in, sort of get an interactive, what are the priorities for our senators, for our member of Congress? What are they looking for? What grant opportunities and other things they see coming down the road. And then we will take them to see some of these big projects and priorities for Roanoke and make sure that they're fully bought in and read in on what we're doing, and also answer any questions. So look for that site visit coming up in September. Now we'll move on to the next slide, please. Next, Scott.
Thanks, Clayton. Yeah, just wanted to provide an update on a couple of outstanding action items from our end. One item that we had been tasked with was helping navigate the somewhat cumbersome process of becoming a party of record related to the Norfolk Southern merger. We have completed that process and served all of the other parties of record, whether it be through mail or email, and that should be completed at this point. And as a reminder, this establishes and preserves the city's right to comment and provide feedback to the process. It also provides the city the kind of window into what's going on and receiving feedback and updates throughout the process. And so we will keep you updated as any developments or updates out of this arise. And the other that we wanted to mention kind of in the same bucket as this is we just got the feedback that we have, or I should say the city has been designated a gateway community by the National Park Service. And we're exploring all of the new benefits and exciting things that will be available to the city out of that. But to kind of provide a preview of that, there are basically a series of potential benefits that are now extended to the city, such as required consultation with the National Park Service, additional funding opportunities, and formal partnerships that the city can enter into. So that's an exciting new development, and we'll be working with the city to maximize that new status. And I think that with those two final updates, we can move to the last slide, which I believe is for questions. So we open it up, any questions, feedback, or comments, but those are the main items and updates from DC.
Well, thank you both very much. Very exciting to hear about the Gateway community, and also thank you for your work on the Norfolk Southern merger. Do we have any questions from committee members? Mr. Volleson.
It's kind of a bit of a question, but more of a comment. With the Gateway communities, last week we were able to meet with the Blue Ridge Parkway superintendent, and that's how we figured out that there is no process to becoming a gateway city. And basically, asked her, what do we need to do to get there? And she said, you are now a gateway city. But basically, because we're on the Blue Ridge Parkway and connected, that we've had those rights for a while. So I'm excited for us to start using those now that we know that we've got that designation. And then I also had a question about the CDBG funding in the Road to Housing Act.
Yes.
Did I read correctly that the CDBG money can go towards affordable housing and also workforce housing, which is 100% of AMI?
So I'll get the exact rules have not fully been published, but up to 20% of your CDBG allocation can be used for the construction of affordable housing. The implementation and how the appropriation will work, we're still waiting to forthcoming, but that's my understanding from the bills that it will allow it. So I think we should know more soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Mr. Cackness. Yes, sir. You got to come on up.
On the road to housing, could you just comment on how that legislation might interact with the Opportunity Zone federal legislation that was passed last year, where the governor's office is in the process of redesignating opportunity zones? So I think it would be relevant just to understand how that might interact with access to affordable housing.
That is something I'll have to look into and get back to you. I want to make sure that we've got that fully understood. I don't want to give you the wrong information at this time. So if you'll allow me, I will go research last year's Opportunity Zone legislation and how it would interact with the Road to Housing bill. We'll get that back to you as soon as we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cackness. Good question. Any others? I had one, I'm trying to wrap my head around this, but we don't have Mr. Bryant with us here today. I've been mostly focused on our state legislative agenda right now, and I wanted to just make sure I'm thinking about this the right way, is where potentially there is some overlap over some of the asks that we have for our federal representatives as well as our state legislators. So I'm thinking of, for example, the Amtrak station. When I'll talk in a minute about what our timeline might be for this, but do you have any thoughts on how we can best work, and I'm assuming it's with your team, on just making sure that these asks are like in harmony and not kind of stepping on each other?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to take it the question first and then Clayton fill in, but that's definitely something that we work with other local government clients where you have both obviously your state priorities, your federal funding priorities, and then obviously you take funding from both for priority projects. And so, yeah, that's definitely something that we would like to and can help you iron out. And, you know, one thing we can work with Preston to encourage and suggest would be after we do our federal site visit and hear from those federal stakeholders on what their priorities are so that we can marry our priorities with their priorities at the federal level. We ought to think about doing something similar with our state level stakeholders to bring them in and say, hey, we're putting these projects towards federal, federal funding opportunities. We would also like to, suggest that we find state funding for them, or here is a separate set of projects that we'd like to harness state funding for. So I think we can do a similar, exercise for state stakeholders following our federal stakeholder visit. And I think that would help iron some of that out.
Thank you. I think that would be a great idea, and we'd be glad to help facilitate that too. And that kind of gets us to the timeline of what we're working with our schedule. So we had our first public hearing. I think the city manager and everyone on the staff side who helped pull that together, we got a lot of good feedback. I've continued to do feedback to some of the groups in the community in different spaces, housing, transportation, that did not come and speak at that hearing. What I am hoping to do is have on September 8th, which would be our next legislative committee meeting, a final review, a final draft for us to review that we can then as a body vote on in October. We could vote on that at our first meeting in October, which would also overlap with our legislative committee meeting, or I guess it could move a little further back to the second meeting of that month if we wanted to. But that's the timeline that we're working with. So Mr. Binkley and Mr. Cox, I think that works out well, that if we have our federal representatives here September 7th, we will have something that we will be discussing and reviewing September 8th when we meet, and then we'll be ready, hopefully, with any final feedback from staff or the community to have something to vote on in October, if that sounds right to everyone.
That sounds good.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I did want to pause because I had one request. Is there anyone in the audience today that wanted to provide any comment to the legislative committee? Ms. Virginia Sweet, I thought that might be you. I'm going to let you come down and have 3 minutes if you wanted to offer some comment at the hearing today. Meeting, not hearing.
Greetings, Mayor Cobb and the rest of our esteemed council members and Ms. Turner. One thing I just really wanted some follow-up on is last year when HB 181 went to a study instead of being passed. What are the next steps on that? Do we assume it's going to be passed and reintroduced, or?
That's a good question. Do you know the answer to that, Ms. Carini?
So I believe this is the one about affordable housing where they have the study. I don't know the exact timeline, and I do not know what the ultimate outcome is going to be. But I know that, is it the Virginia Department of Housing? I think they are the ones working on the study.
On the study to see if it's feasible.
Yes.
So we'll wait and see. I would assume if they find it feasible, then it would be reintroduced. Another one is just to, there was also a bill passed this past year that raised the valuation of real estate that could be condemned from $75,000 to $150,000 is what I remember Mr. Velocin say, but I read 125.
Yeah.
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah, 125.
All right. So does there have to be an ordinance now passed and a policy passed so that can be implemented and how it needs to be implemented?
I don't believe so.
It does not. The state law changed, so now that is the law, and now that allows properties to go into the land bank. they're eligible if they're under that dollar amount.
Okay.
Yes.
And is there a mechanism in place to get updates about the land bank? I just would love to see something public out there about how well this is working, because there's been a big investment, but are they continuing to rehab the properties and things?
I would direct that question to the city manager. I think that we, council, would also benefit from getting an updated and presentation on that, but.
I agree, and we're going to be working with, so our land bank is handled through TAP, and we're working with them in order for that to be a more transparent process.
Right.
So hopefully we'll be able to, if they don't have it advertised on their website, we can make sure that it's advertised on ours.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen it on theirs. Thank y'all very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sweet. And just to put a final point on that, some of the information we'll be looking for in that we'll get back to you is specifically how many homes have been updated and put back into occupancy and how that program's going from kind of those metrics, just the actual numbers. Thank you very much. All right, well, I do not have any, oh, I'm sorry.
I'll say real quick
Yes,
that,
sir. Councilman Nash.
From being on TAP's executive board, I had asked Ms. Penn to provide that information. I sent that to us, to the original email thread that you had started, Vice Mayor. So for us internally, we have that information. And yeah, if we can get TAP here, because I do know that based off some of our my prior conversations with them, I think TAP is trying to move in a different direction with housing, and you know, we've recently sold, well, they've sold some properties that they were holding to other folks and are trying to get off of housing and being like property managers. So a conversation is probably definitely worth it at this point. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nash, and thank you for sharing that information that you got from Ms. Penn. I was just going to make one final request to Ms. Turner and staff, and that was just to kind of put on your radar to please flag for community engagement, that as this moves along, we will look to their creative expertise to get the handouts, like we'll probably again have a palm card and then a pamphlet, and so just getting that on staff's radar that as it moves along, we will hopefully get their assistance in getting something that looks nice.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much. I don't have anything else, so if there is no other business, I will adjourn the, oh, yes, sir, Mr. Nash.
So, have we talked with, and I believe it was Senator Suderline, that was the main one. I'm trying to look back through our last update from Preston several months ago, but the transportation of folks that are brought here on TPO back to the original location of where they were sent here from, I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that, and that, you know, there was an interest from other senators in Richmond on supporting us in our efforts to do that. So I want to make sure that we continue to keep that on the radar.
Yes, thank you, definitely. I did have that. Our buckets that we have are housing, public safety, economic development, budget funding, transportation, environment, civil liberties, and governance. I think on housing, we have some pretty good priorities to work with, whether that's figuring out the next steps on that affordable dwelling unit program. We've heard from a lot of folks, and it was in our agenda last year to support something on tenants' rights. I did have that measure from last year on public safety. I think we have some items to figure out just what our priorities are with economic development, budget and funding. I think transportation, we have a lot of priorities that we have discussed, both airport, railroad, vehicle, trails, all of the above. I think we have plenty to work with there. Environment, I feel sure that we will be able to fill that, and then governance and civil liberties as well. But yes, thank you for that. And those that would be really helpful. Again, I'll just plug again to the council members. I will send you an official sort of plea over email to get any remaining top issues that you have that you want to be sure are included. And then we'll have a similar process as we had last year, where everyone on council will have a chance to review those and rank those and ask questions and just review to inform how we get to those top 3, 4 priorities. But very good question. Thank you for that. And if there is nothing else, I will adjourn the Legislative Committee meeting. Thank you all very much.
And reconvening our council meeting, thank you, Vice Mayor, for a good legislative committee update. Before we move into our two briefings, I'll ask if there are any items on the 2:00 p.m. agenda or any topics that council has to bring up at this point. We're going to move into our briefings. We have two today. The first is our parking study findings and recommendations, and I'm going to turn to our city manager, Ms. Turner, to introduce the briefings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to invite Mr. Brian Mann, who is our Executive Enterprise Administrator, to come up and introduce our speaker, who will be providing us with a presentation on a year-long parking study.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, members of council. So today's an exciting day. It's a culmination of an internal 5-year plan within the Roanoke Parking Division. Our first year was to get the right contractor on board, and we did that. Second year was to invest into infrastructure and cleaning and getting the garages safe, and we did that. The third year was investing into modernization, technology upgrades. We worked on that. We've successfully done that. Year 4 was to really focus on customer satisfaction, and we've got great customer satisfaction scores. So year 5, the plan was to, and we did implement a year-long parking study. So today, we get to present to you those recommendations, and we're really excited about these recommendations. They truly are going to be changing for downtown for the better. So at this point, I'm going to bring up John Forrester, the principal at Fishbeck. He also worked with another company called Labella. They did the technical part of the data research. So I'm going to have Mr. Forrester walk you through the presentation, and we'll have question and answers at the end.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Love to talk about parking. So we'll jump right in. I did meet some of you previously in the fall when I was here as well. So thanks for your time. And thanks for the whole city for being part of this. So just to start out, some of our goals were really to review the overall parking situation in downtown and River's Edge, but really to focus on Park Roanoke's operations and what they could do to continue to have the parking system support the growth and vitality of downtown, and look at operational opportunities to really, as Brian said, to make sure that that patron experience is really good, and that parking doesn't detract from your visit to downtown, but it supports it. Study process, we did a lot of public engagement. We did on-site observations and job shadowing with staff. We met with several property and business owners, a couple city council members, economic development team, the chamber, stakeholders from the community. We did a targeted meeting with the restaurant and service workers group through DRI. We met with the River's Edge Business District Association meeting. So online survey, over 1,000 responses to our online survey, which was that's really good response. So we were happy with that. And then we did a public open house at the Bergman Center in the fall as well, where we invited people to come in. So like I said, we did our, really tried to reach out to the community and get their input. What do you need? Is there anything that's could be different for downtown parking that could help you out? So we also did occupancy counts, both in downtown and River's Edge over a 4-day period to just understand how full things are. It's easy to say, I can't find any parking, but what's the reality of how full are our parking facilities really? We did a really deep dive into the on-street free parking situation, the 1-hour free. It was a big piece. It's a big piece of your thing. It's your most visible parking asset, and it's free. And so we really wanted to take a look at whether that was good policy for you. We looked at rates, fees, and on all sorts of other policies. We came up with some preliminary recommendations. We vetted them through Park Roanoke and Economic Development and DRI, and here we are, presenting to council on all that. So that's a summary of the year-long process we've been going through. Really wanted to talk about one of the first things we said, what are the goals? What does a successful parking system look like? And really for patrons and visitors, when I get to town, can I find a spot? Is it easy to find a spot? For property owners and business owners, are my patrons able to get to my business easily without feeling hassled? And do my employees have a reliable place to park where they can predictably park? We talked about that on-street element of getting turnover, making sure those spaces aren't parked up all day, but that they're, hey, when I pull down the street and I want to go there, I can find at least a spot or two within a couple blocks. So we're getting that turnover. And easy to find off-street options. You know, if I'm going to be there for several hours, work all day, go to an event, is it easy to find a space to do that? The second side of that coin is success for city administration. You can't develop a system that's so easy to use but impossible to manage. You have to manage it as well, and that is important. And so the really good patron experience is where we started with that, but does it support economic vitality and growth? Does it support the growth of your community? Efficient administration, but also financially self-sustaining. Your parking system is its own financial entity, and from the very beginning, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but we've operated from the standpoint that it needs to at least be maintained self-supporting. And then communicate effectively with the community so people can understand options for parking. Again, so easy to criticize it, and so how do you get that information out so people can find a spot easily? Those survey results for downtown, so we got a lot of feedback from people here regularly. 62% of the people who responded said they're downtown at least once a week. So those are the people who are coming downtown. They did respond. I will say, Roanoke's a driving town. 92%, again, a parking survey, so you're going to get a little heavy on that. 92% drive to downtown, some walk. Some bicycle, some walk, but most people are driving. Really, the employee issue it came up a lot. Where do employees park? Are they allowed to park? And on the survey, self-admitted, 65% of all employees don't have a permit of any type. So they are looking every day for where the best place to park is. A lot of people, well, this is about half, 54% of all respondents said they're here during the week, which means there's a lot of people here on nights and weekends as well. Again, 2/3 say it's at least somewhat difficult to park, and a large majority said the 1 hour time limit on street was not quite enough. So we'll talk a little bit about occupancy and what that really looked like. I said it's easy to say I can't find a spot, but what does it look like? And then you do have some targeted places. The Market Garage is fairly busy garage, peak at 80% on a weekday at 11 a.m. The higher ed lot, specific use. Warehouse Row lot, very full. It's free on Friday nights. We would have expected it to be pretty full when it's free on a Friday night. Your Market Garage is the most consistently utilized. As a whole, though, your entire downtown is 52% of the spaces. That was the peak we found studying that, which means there are thousands, between public and private, there are thousands of unused parking spaces across downtown at any given time right now. So that's what the occupancy numbers show. Now, again, some of that's privately owned. There's some big signs out there that say don't park here. And so those are things to kind of consider and work through as you work on overall parking policy. That deep dive into on-street parking and what it's meant to accomplish, it's meant so that your visitors and your patrons can come and patronize your businesses. And they can run their errands and they can do the things that they want to do downtown. It is not intended for 4 or 5 hour parking, for employees, for residents, those people who are downtown regularly. It is there to support the quick use of those businesses. There's other needs on the curb, loading zones for sure, quick stops, bus stops, bike zones, all sorts of things, fire lanes. There's some police parking around outside this building as well. So there are certainly some other things. And one thing that on-street enforcement needs, we find across the country, is if it's not enforced, if you're not, you can post signs everywhere and say, here are the rules, but if you don't enforce them, people will, over time, take advantage of that. So enforcement is necessary. Again, go back to off-street parking, talk just a little bit more about Park Roanoke has 11 locations, the 7 garages and the 4 lots. but there are over 100 private parking lots and a few private parking structures in downtown, so there's a lot of private parking that's there. Some of it is commercial use of public parking, you can pay a private owner to park, and some of it is just restricted use for that business. But there are a lot. In total, there's 65 acres of land in your downtown area that are dedicated to parking the streets. So for anybody to say the city hasn't committed to parking, it's there. Does it always, issue is using it as well as we can, get the most out of it. If you're going to pave that land and not have a building on it, let's get the most out of it. Safety came up, as it does in downtown discussions in general. People want to feel safe. I will say that I know every city works on that. I know you're working on it. Even since we've started this process, we've been informed that there's been a heightened police presence in downtown. Park Roanoke has invested in private security in their garages. And so just that the opportunity is there. I'm not saying your city's unsafe or safe. I'm just saying it's all perception is what safety is, and there has been effort on your part to continue to raise that perception. But for effective parking policy to ask people to walk 2, 3, 4 blocks, they do need to feel like it's a safe walk. And so it's important that that perception stay high, that people do feel safe as they move around downtown. So with all that background being said, we'll start moving on to some of the goals and some of the options that we came up with and we discussed throughout this. And I just wanted to start with a talk of what the role of municipal parking is. And it really goes back to that piece of it's to support economic development. It's to support the vitality of the area it's in. It's to monitor infrastructure, maintain it, and really make sure that people have access to parking, whether that's publicly or privately owned parking, that they do have access. I would say, to be cautious, I don't know that the city needs to feel obligated to provide a municipal spot for everybody who wants one. As I said before, with occupancy, there's a lot of spots out there. Let's let the private sector step in and do some work on that as well. It's really a shared effort. But Park Roanoke must operate with a balanced budget. There are operational costs, there's cost to maintain the facilities daily, and there's debt service, and then there's capital maintenance. Funny as it seems, concrete and steel does break down, especially when you drive cars through it every day. And so there is money that does need to be spent. And you have assets here that are in good shape, but it does take money every year to make sure that they stay in good shape. And then to plan for the future and look at, when do we need to say this garage needs to come down? When does this lot need to become a building, and how do we plan for that? And by doing ongoing occupancy counts and doing your maintenance, then you're well positioned to make adjustments as opportunities arise, which is really critical for planning is hey, when something comes up, can we adjust and make this happen, or are we so stuck in what we're doing that we cannot? We talked about rate strategies. Rates and fees really are a tool to manage your parking supply. So, the higher the rates are, you have lower rates in some areas to move some people around. Core locations, Center and Square is your most expensive garage. That makes sense. It's right in the middle of what you're doing. Gainsborough and Campbell are less expensive garages. Consideration of downtown employees and residents. As I said, we don't want them on the street, but we do need to make sure they have predictable parking and that they know where they can be. They're making a big commitment. They spend more hours downtown than almost anybody else. So let's make sure we have spots for them. And rates are really based on goals, operational costs, and planned expenditures. Political body, you sit here, parking rates can become very political. I'd like to remove that out. It's based on goals, expenditures, and capital maintenance and what you need to do, and try to take the politics out of rate setting by adjusting them regularly and on a schedule as much as possible. So we looked at some options on how we wanted to do this. Number one was to do paid on-street parking everywhere, to scrap your free parking on street, eliminate the time limit, and put meters up across downtown. It's easy for people to understand. I'm sure you've been to other cities where that's the normal procedure. This is, by the book, if you will. The downside would, you'd spend well over $1 million just to bring that infrastructure in and get it set up. It does not consider the distinct nature of Roanoke and what you're trying to accomplish, but it almost certainly would increase revenue for sure if you started charging for every on-street spot that is currently 1 hour free. Option number 2 was to kind of go in the other direction and say, well, what could we do if we maximized free parking and extended the hours, more free parking lots and garages? And everybody loves the sound of free parking. It sounds great, but what it does is it becomes a race to the space. And so your patrons and visitors who get there after the employees and residents end up parking the furthest away and having the longest walks and having the least convenient use of the facilities. Because when it's all free, that's just the way it goes. The people who get there first get the spots. And again, that goes back to the challenge of if you expanded that too far, free parking, what you would get is an inability to balance the parking budget. So option 3 is kind of where we settled a little bit more, a really patron-focused type of operation, maintaining that free parking on street. Again, lots of talk about that, lots of presented the pros and cons and the options, but with longer time limits and extended enforcement hours and some targeted free parking off streets. We'll talk a little bit more about the details of this, but first hour free in the garages and then free on Sundays. So 1 day a week that's completely free everywhere downtown that has a lighter demand touch where you can maybe get away with that, but offers an opportunity for the businesses to really have that what they're looking for on a Sunday. Consistent rates and policies across all facilities. Different rates in different places can be confusing to people. So what are our policies? Do we charge the same all day long? Do we have different rates in the evening? And we tried to clean that up a little bit. And additional staff. Brian's in the process of hiring right now. Additional staff to really promote the parking system, to be a client services type of representative, to really help people find the parking that works for them. And to look at this in a way that balances that budget and provides the long-term maintenance of the facilities. So some of the features are option 3. There's the free parking, but extended from 60 minutes to 90 minutes, give people a little more time to have a nice lunch and stop by a store when they're downtown instead of going, oh, I'm at 58 minutes, I need to get moving. You do have a lot of 2-hour spaces around town. I would say keep those for now and monitor them over time to see how they work. So it's removing all the meters. You won't have any metered spots on street in downtown. Adjust the hours of operation to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. So to really hit all the days that you're busy, that you have parking operations those days. And again, enforcement is essential. It shouldn't be heavy-handed by any stretch. Actually, the goal is not very many tickets, but high compliance. And that you get that through consistent enforcement, not heavy-handed, but consistent enforcement. Currently, it's effective, and so, but it would need to be extended for the new hours. Rate structure for permits. I'm recommending you maintain your current permit rates. They seem adequate to meet the financial demand, and they do move people around appropriately to the different garages. Continue to offer pricing tiers based on location. And this is a question for you that Brian's going to bring up to you sooner or later. The residential permits are at a 50% discount right now. That's a policy that was put in place several years back to encourage downtown residential development. Is it still a discount that is vital to encouraging that residential change? And that's a question that there's no right or wrong there. It's how do you want to approach that? Hourly, or we call daily parking, so the first hour would be free in the parking structures and the off-street Roanoke lots. The first 2 hours would be $2. The current rate is the first 2 hours is $4. 2 hours through 4 hours would be $6, and the daily max would go from $8 to $9. And again, free on Sunday, all day long. Talking about enforcement a little bit, one of the problems when you do time-limited parking is people pull around the corner, or they go up the street and they try, I reset my 60 or 90 minutes by going 100 feet. And so setting up larger zones where you have to go a couple blocks to reset that clock is what we're recommending. And so by the time you would move your first time, you might be able to move just a few blocks, but then you got to move a few blocks further. The goal is just to give people an opportunity, keep those spaces open and not have someone jump around downtown all day. And then with that would be a 4-hour reparking interval. So if you did come downtown, run an errand in the morning, and your car was noted on a certain block at say 10 a.m., but you came back for dinner at 5, well, there's 4 hours between that, so you would be okay. So that's the 4-hour parking interval. But it also gives enough time so that the enforcement staff can recognize, oh, your car left. It wasn't here at 10, and then we noted it gone at 2, and it was back at 5, and it allows you to do that. Some slight changes to your citation structure. Really wanted to talk about scofflaws, people who continually try to take advantage of the system. So parking citations would be $25 for the first through the 5th citation, but if you like to rack up citations, the price would go up, as try to give you an incentive to find a different choice as opposed to getting a lot of parking citations, and to go through with that and try to get you to park off street. If you're downtown a lot, get a permit, get a pass, park off street. A lot of the booting and towing would be similar. The one big change is right now, several years ago, with the introduction of the meters and other things, the city chose to do warning tickets. As part of that, we're recommending you eliminate the warning tickets. It's a lot of tickets written every year that it's just a lot of work without any gain. No one's parking differently because of them. So recommendation of removing the warning tickets. You do have quite a mix of what I'll call short-term and loading spaces. You have 15-minute spaces, 20-minute loading zones, 30-minute spaces, and then just straight-up loading zones that don't have any time limits. In coordination with transportation, I'd like to take a look at those, see if you can consolidate those down a little bit, just make it simpler for people to make it simpler for enforcement to do that. And even loading zones later in the day. Let's see if you can dual purpose those. Use them as loading zones up through the day, but maybe after 4 or something, you could use them as a type of the 90-minute parking. Be careful managing your special use spaces, your loading zones, your ADA, your valet, reserved for city. The more spaces that get held for special use are less spaces that patrons can use. So just make sure that we vet those out. And one of the ways to do that is review the use of all special use spaces every 24 hours. I don't know where, but I'm certain there's a loading zone out there that's in front of a place that was a different business when it was put up and now is no longer needed. And the only way to do that is just to make sure that you regularly, again, every 24 months, you kind of run through that and say, hey, is this still a good, viable application for this? On-street ADA is interesting. We had federal legislation or federal rules that passed last year on on-street ADA, requiring a certain number. It has design guidelines. The design guidelines are really tough because ADA spaces take up a lot of room. There's not always the sidewalk space to add in the extra landing zones. It's hard to keep the level, Not everything can be under 2% in a city that's got hills in it, so that can be a little tough. And there's a lot of flexibility in that. You do have 39 on-street ADA spaces in downtown right now, but the Transportation Department, when I spoke with them in the fall, they were aware of the ProWAG guidelines, and it's part of their long-term plan. So they don't have to be done immediately. They're like they phased in as you redo streets, as you reconstruct. So long-term plan to put those in and expand their use as much as possible. Transportation and transit, as I noted, Roanoke's a driving city. According to the Census Bureau, 84.5% of all workers commute alone to work in Roanoke, which is it's a pretty good sized number. Only 2.6% of workers commute by transit, although bus stops and other options to use that curb need to continue to be monitored and used. In a city like Roanoke, you want to make sure that you continue to promote and provide access for these other ones, but recognizing that parking is important, that most of your constituents do drive, and that it is important to provide that infrastructure as well. Was asked a question about parklets and special use of the curb. Parklets are great. People love them. It expands, placemaking, community gathering spots. A lot of good that comes from it. Non-quantifiable good. That's what I get at. There is a cost. Someone's got to put them out. Someone's got to pay for them. Someone's got to keep them clean. And they take away part of the parking supply. It's impossible to measure those two against each other, a dollars and cents versus a non-quantifiable, great for the community type of things. I would say if there's an interest in them, go slow. Put a few in 1 year, test them out, see how they feel, see if they're working. Some communities, they don't have the capacity in DPW. They just don't want to deal with it. It's another hassle they don't want to deal with. But if you're interested in it, I would say start slowly, test them out, and see where you go. And I think there's an opportunity to do some other things, explore some other programs, prepaid permits, which I know Brian and Park Roanoke are working on, especially with the new gateless systems and stuff like that. You can pre-purchase your parking and do some other things. So between the time we started this and now, we've already started to make some progress on these things of just, whether we like it or not, people are tied to their phones nowadays. If I can pay for that parking and know where I'm supposed to be before I ever leave for downtown, that brings some comfort to some people's minds. It makes the trip easier. And so continue to push those opportunities forward. Just talk briefly about River's Edge. The athletic fields down there, we were here on a beautiful day in October, man, they were full. People were using them, lots of people out walking and biking and just really enjoying the outdoors. So they can be busy, but they're really busy very intensely for very short periods of time. It's an hour here, an hour there, a Saturday morning, a Sunday afternoon. What happens is the streets near there become clogged and potentially hazardous, and really clogged, like people parking in no parking zones and double parked and kind of jammed up. And so there's a need for easy access and drop off. What I would caution you is be careful not to rush headlong and to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in creating new spaces. Let's see if we can work slowly towards a solution that provides more access and more drop off. And one of those things is the Evans Mill Road Tunnel is there, provides nice access right into that area. Could use a little freshening, maybe a few more lights and some other things that make it a little more of a pleasant experience. It wasn't terrible by any stretch, but certainly could be a little better. Activity and use of it, lots of people through there will improve the perceptions. It's just like garages, lots of people in them, lots of cars, it just improves the perception of safety. Maybe there's some opportunities right around it to create some additional pickup and drop-off zones that would be targeted for that area. And the new Carillion garage at Crystal Springs in McClanahan, well, I spoke with Carillion. It's their impression that that garage is open to public use in the evenings and on weekends. And yeah, it's 2 blocks away, but you're going to recreate anyway. So, the opportunity, again, before you build new parking, is it possible to use some of the parking that already exists in the area? We did put together some sketches and some things, some opportunities to create some new spaces if that's what you want to do. But I would just caution you, let's see if we can use existing infrastructure now and try to do that before going headlong into the others. And I will say, on those crowded streets and other things, part of educating people that there are other options and there are other things to do is putting a little enforcement on the back end of that so that when you park in a fire lane, you should get a ticket. You park in a no parking zone, you should get a ticket. And there is a little bit of willful disregard down there sometimes. And part of it is they don't maybe know where else they can park. So it's a combination of education and enforcement to go together on that. The Crystal Springs corridor, those few blocks there, we've got a nice little commercial district going. We didn't measure anything that would say you need to build extra parking. I would say continue with the 1 and 2 hour spaces that are there. It is my opinion that if on a busy Friday or Saturday night that expands out into the neighborhood a little bit, that's a good thing. Those spaces are already built, they're already there. It contracts back down in a few hours and it goes away. It's not a long-term headache. If it does become a long-term headache, then that's maybe an opportunity to change. But to utilize those spaces that are in that neighborhood down there for a few hours, again, on a busy Friday or Saturday night is a good thing. It's not a bad thing that needs to be eliminated. And if it is, that garage sits right there. People can use it. It's only 2 blocks away. So, and then just a few slides on overall policy and planning. It's just that communicating with the community and really building a patron-forward type of system. We talked about this parking client services person who would do promotion, meet with business owners, and just try to make sure people understood and knew where they're parking. The biggest reason people say, I can't find a space to park, is because they just don't know any different than exactly what they've always done. And so how do we expand their knowledge base so that they can find those spots? And really developing a program with social media posts, email, and other things that help people learn that. And working through the restaurants and the bars and the businesses that are down there to inform their clients. Oh, did you know? You can park over here. There's spaces over there. It's just education, and it needs to be constant, and it never ends. Again, the goal of that is just to really develop a thriving marketplace, both public and private, where people can find a space and they can get to their destination. At the end of the day, parking is just a stop someone makes on the way to their destination. So let's make that as easy and as painless as possible, and continue to promote the growth of downtown. We did hear a lot about premium parking when we were here. People have opinions about them. What I would say is private landowners have a role in all this, as I've said from the beginning. The one thing I do think is posting of rates when people pull in, so that they can make a decision before they're parked and they walk up to the kiosk, would be a good thing. Continue to differentiate Park Roanoke from those opportunities through logos, signs, colors, and all that. But I also say, I found several, you can see on this one small sign on the left, there's several places that have just put up a sign, and with a QR code, you can park in their lots after hours and on weekends for a fee. And I'd say maybe those signs would be a little bit bigger, poster rates, but that is bringing the private sector into public parking, and it's a great asset to the community when that happens. So continue to work with those private landowners. The goal at the end of the day is to get people in a parking spot that works for them, that's good for them. Some of the financial implications of that option 3 that we talked about, free on Sundays would cost almost $100,000 for Park Roanoke. Removing the meters is a little over 30. The expanded hours, there might be a little more enforcement revenue, and eliminating the warning citations is probably the biggest dollar value. So we vetted this through Park Roanoke, and they looked at their expanded operational expenses, technology and equipment expenses, and just how the revenue might shift. When you change things a little, you're trying to predict human behavior, not the easiest thing in the world, so try to understand this. But Park Roanoke feels very confident that it should end up somewhere around break even, that they'll be in good shape with the changes while offering more expanded free parking. Timeline, it'll take some time to put things in place. Brian's going to talk a little bit more about that, but probably 9 to 12 months in there. There are probably some legal changes that have to be made. They'll be coming back to council to get some things done. Equipment, software upgrades, getting zones in place. Good communication, taking your time, making sure you get the details right will be critical, but it will take a little bit of time. And recommendations will continue to be vetted against your big picture goals and what you're trying to accomplish as a city. And I talk about that, just like your city, just like everything, it always continually evolves. And the nice thing about having a professional operator and a parking, someone like Brian in that role, is they're always looking at that. How do we continue to change and promote and do things well for our community? And so policies that you put in place need to be evaluated annually, is what I say. They should be looked at annually, from rates to policies to enforcement to zone. Everything should be looked at once a year to really say, are we still serving our constituents in the best possible way that we can? And don't be afraid to make changes. Don't make them quick. Give every change a year to see where the ripples come out, but don't be afraid to make changes. If something's not working, go ahead and change it. And if a new change needs to be made, let's go ahead and implement it. So really, at the end of this, what we really focused on was a patron-focused system. Expanded free parking, longer time frames, opportunities for people to come downtown and enjoy, extended operational hours to really reflect your changing city. You are becoming a bit of an entertainment district on nights and weekends. It's real, and so expanded hours to do that. And then proactive engagement, education, and promotion to really make sure people know how to use the parking system well. That's the short story. I've given a lot more detail. We have a much longer presentation to Park Roanoke, but that's the short story. And so open to questions and discussion at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Forrester. That was an excellent overview of all the work that you've done. We appreciate it. Mr. Mann, is there some additional information you want to share?
No, just welcome to take any questions that I might have.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to turn to council and see what follow-up questions we have. Mr. Volleson.
Well, first off, I want to thank you, because this was an amazingly well thought out plan. You guys did a lot of your research. I was really excited to hear that you were able to talk to Carillion about their system as well. And so I really want to thank you, because I'm probably the only one up here that's taken a parking class. And I know how crazy parking is and all the different aspects that y'all looked at. It's very detailed, and I really appreciate the work that you did for us.
Oh, thank you.
One of the questions I had is, I've heard from some folks that it might be easier for us to, when it comes to our, having an app to park, if we, if like Premium and the city had the same app. Is that something that you guys looked at or have any thoughts on? Is like, how could we brand things, I guess, make it so that you can go to one place to purchase all your parking in Roanoke?
We did not specifically look at that. There are, frankly, only a handful of payment app companies out there. They brand in a whole. It's like Kleenex. You'd think there's 45 of them, but there's really only one. There's only a handful of them.
Gotcha.
And so is it possible for Brian and Premium to have a conversation about maybe getting on the same platform? I mean, anybody who's doing it privately has their own goals and their own way of doing things. So is there a way to do that? I think it's worthy of a discussion with them to see what can happen.
I can jump in a little too. So there are like third-party vendor app companies such as Flowbird, Whoosh, that probably allow payment for both companies. Of course, if there's one combined app, we run into proprietary issues. But there are other apps that people can use that aren't specifically Metropolis or specifically Premium. And there's even websites where you can go and purchase that parking. Currently, Metropolis doesn't have that here in the city, but they can use those third-party vendor apps anywhere.
Thank you for that. I'm just thinking about how that could possibly make it easier for out-of-towners. The other question I had is about there was an ordinance that you proposed for, for displaying charges. Is that something that we need to, is that something we already have, or is that something we would have to go to the state for?
I did a little preliminary research on this, and I didn't see any state authority, so I would suggest that get on the legislative agenda unless we know of some other Virginia locality doing it. So yes, I would recommend that.
All right, thank you.
Ultimately, what we are suggesting is maybe an ordinance or a legislation that would require any entity that charges for parking that they display the rates and the fees on the entrance to that location. So there's no confusion as far as what it costs. Some of the private lots in the city, people are unaware of what the price is when they pull in. Of course, we at Park Roanoke post all of our prices and rates at the entrance and the exits. So there's no communication issue or confusion.
Awesome. Mr. Nash, do you have any questions?
Yeah. I was going to say that, and this thought just hit my head, but if we're talking about, excuse me, if we're talking about potential legislation and them displaying their rates, we might also want to think about them having to display or disclose that, like, this is parking not provided by the city of Roanoke, or like something where like it identifies that like we are private, we're not a part of the city.
Yeah.
Because I swear, whenever people email me, most of the time, when people email me with issues about parking and I ask them like, where did you park? It's never one of our garages or on-street parking. It's always a private lot that they've had an issue with in some form or fashion. So that is something that we might want to also add into that legislation as a requirement for them to disclose and display.
Well, I can share with you, Mr. Nash, that in a meeting that the mayor and I had with the city manager and Premium Parking, we were able to get them on their app to add a banner at the bottom of the app that says, this is not a city-owned parking lot. So we have been working with them a little bit, and they've been cooperative in that fashion. But, so it is actually on their app, if that helps.
Vice Mayor, do you have any questions?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I also want to say thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation and the work you put into it. I was also going to ask about that ordinance on the private lots. I would like to see us pursue that. And then on that vein, anything else that we could do to apply pressure to some of these private lots to not price gouge our residents. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One was that on that improving bike and walk connectivity, I know it sounds like we have very low walk and bike transportation to downtown. I think that we can improve on that, and that's my comment is mostly for us up here on just all of the ways that we can encourage more people to walk and bike downtown and continuing to build out that infrastructure so that it's an option and that it's safe for people to do that. And related to safety, I think we've done a really good job of both with our parking garages, but then downtown making improvements on safety. And I think now some of our work is how do we change the perception of what people think about downtown, because a notion that it is unsafe was ingrained in a lot of people's minds. And I think one way we do that is just getting more people back downtown. And I think if you're walking down a street and there's no one else on it at night, it can be kind of scary. And this, again, is a comment somewhat for council, but thinking about how we create seating options downtown. We need to, I think about that. We removed all of our seating downtown because of the concerns around homeless folks congregating. But what that does is it makes it so that no one can congregate downtown. And I think it makes our downtown less welcoming. I think that having people sitting around outside, dining, having coffee, sitting on a bench, whatever, improves the vitality of a downtown area. So I mentioned to you, Mr. Mann, when we met that parking garages do not have to be ugly. And in fact, we have some really pretty ones, I think. The Church Avenue garage is really nice. So encouraging people to use those parking garages through more, getting people to do the walking is the hard part. But if the walk from A to B is pleasant and there's art and there's creative street lighting and there's things like that, I think we can continue encouraging people to use those spaces, and I commend you for the investments you made in security that I know comes at a big cost to your operation, but I think it'll really help. And so I just wanted to say that to, council colleagues, that I think we can do some more to kind of create, change that perception of downtown. And then the last thing I would say is related to the River's Edge neighborhood. I just wanted to remind council that we had an offer. We've been approached, there's that Ore Branch restoration area right out where the Ramada Inn was, and then there's that lot behind it where council is hearing from the community. We're having a lot of issues with that area back there. And I would just suggest that as we look at longer-term parking needs for that River's Edge area, that we might consider acquiring that parcel that's been offered for sale to us. Because that would provide additional overflow parking that people could use the Greenway to get over to River's Edge without even having to cross Franklin Road. So just putting that out there as those, because what I would not support, just me personally, is putting a parking lot in the park. Yeah. So I think there are some other ways we could address the parking issue. But I'll stop there. Thank you very much for all of your time and work on it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Appreciate the comments. I will say we're in contact with Doug Jackson. And we have a program that we're going to try to roll out, which is we're going to work with local artists, and each one will get a different stairwell. And we're going to do like an amazing mural in the stairwells, just to kind of give that experience. So we've been in contact with him in his office, and exciting to roll that out here in the near future.
Thank you.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very detailed. I would like to know, you stated that in your presentation that we have 39 ADA parking spots. Where are those located?
Yeah, thank you. So they're located all through the downtown business district. We also have an additional 89 ADA spaces within the parking garage structures themselves. So between those two, you have 100 and plus ADA spaces. There is a map that's available through Streets and Traffic that shows the different ADA spaces downtown. If you go to the city's website, you'll be able to find that. And then on every floor of every parking garage, there's multiple ADA spaces.
Well, I have seen those. I haven't seen many downtown on the street. So where are those downtown?
I'd have to defer you to that map.
Okay.
Ma'am, I don't know exactly where they are downtown, but they are scattered throughout. They're not all in one spot. They're dispersed evenly throughout downtown. Obviously, a few more in the centralized downtown business district, but I can absolutely get you that information.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hagan.
Sorry.
So I had a couple of questions about the fee, the proposed fee structure and everything like that. First off, why the increase in 90 days for a boot? Was that, I don't know if there was a
I'm
reason.
sorry, could you repeat that?
So under the current plan, basically if you have 3 parking tickets, you then get a boot. But under the proposed one, there would be, X amount of tickets, and then you would get a boot after 90 days. So why after 90 days instead
Yeah,
of?
so the 90 days is the process that it takes to allow the citizen to go through the appeal process. If they get denied on the appeal, they have the right to take it before district court and follow that process. So it's just that time that allows us to do for due process to enable the ticketing and the boot to come into effect.
Okay. The other thing is like when would those reset, since you would have a time of, first through 4, I think it was, and then 5 through 8 or 9, and then 10. Like when would that reset as for the?
So the Virginia Library of Records mandates that we reset that every 3 years.
Okay.
And everything falls off after 3 years, and we don't keep any records beyond that time.
Okay. Those were my questions. Thank you. Mayor.
I have a couple of follow-ups that came
Sure.
up. Thank you. First, I just wanted to, just thinking about this ordinance that we may have to go through the state on, one of the things I know that premium does is, what do they call it? Dynamic pricing.
Yes.
And I just wanted to flag that for whatever we put forward, that maybe we, if we can get the legislature to prevent that from happening, so that there is a more determined number of what the rate is going to be, instead of it changing and fluctuating based on the demand. And then the other thing I wanted to just note on Ms. Sanchez-Jones's comment about the ADA, just remember that any spot in downtown can become an ADA spot, because you get 8 hours of parking with your handicap placard. And then I'm really grateful. I wanted to point out what you guys have done at the with the Gainsborough Garage, doing the Ramey Art Exhibition. I think that's really, what we talk about, making the garages nicer and making it an experience. I think that's a great first project that you guys did, and I look forward to seeing what you guys do in the future.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Questions are just popping up everywhere.
People love parking.
Mr. Hagan.
So one of the questions that might be more for Ms. Carini, if we do something where we compel the private lots to post, how is that not us compelling speech?
I mean, it would have to be authorized by the state.
Yeah.
And I think we'd have to evaluate that.
Okay.
Yes.
That's something which just popped in my head just as a.
If I could just add a comment on that, with
Yeah.
this new marketing manager position and that we're hiring for, additional way to combat that is to promote what we have.
Yes, yeah,
and
absolutely.
So,
But that's
so
not-
go on the offense versus the defense, which is, it feels like a lot of times we're on the defense, so this is our shot to go on the offense and to tell the community how we don't have dynamic pricings, how we have fixed rates, and it's only 8, maybe now it's going to be 9. And however, if you go into a private lot, you might face $30 for 30 minutes as far as pricing. So therefore, you should come to Park Roanoke Park your car at a star, and that's our motto.
Thank you.
Mr. Bollison, I understand that anyone that has an ADA placard could park anywhere downtown. The issue is when you get there, where the spaces are, they're not going to find any space because whoever is going into the market to have lunch, rushing, is not thinking, oh, I'm going to leave the spot for somebody that needed ADA. So that's why I want to see more parking spots for ADA accessible than
Yes,
now.
and as John mentioned, with the traffic, Streets and Traffic does have that multi-year plan to incorporate that into the downtown district. Of course, that's not technically part of Park Roanoke's purview, but Streets and Traffic and DOT, they have those things planned in future years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? I just have a couple follow-ups. First of all, thank you for the information related to the residential rate and evaluation of that. I would be curious, this may be an economic development question as well. I'd be curious to know what our current residential population is downtown. I mean, I know that it's grown substantially over the last 15 years, and then what the potential is, because I don't know how much more potential we have for housing development downtown. It would be interesting to know that. And we may not know that fully, but I think it's some important data for us. And then what are the parking impacts for that? You shared a really interesting data point with me in our conversation about this. And I'm going to try and find out what this had to do with on-street parking. And I think part of your analysis was looking at 24-hour, kind of the range of when people parked and where they parked. And I think the data point was that you noticed 200 cars every night between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So in part of this study, we did a point and count system. We went out for a week straight, Monday through Friday. We went out from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. and we counted all the cars that were parked on the street. And each night we encountered about the same amount, 200 cars. So it led us to believe that 200 people that are living downtown are not, and if you look at John's data point of 65% of the people that work downtown do not have permits, that's the same with people that live downtown. We're assuming it's about that same data point. So we're hoping through increased enforcement. Kind of the way it works now, you can park your car on a Friday afternoon and don't have to move it till late Monday morning. And that costs our businesses a lot of money downtown. Each space that's in front, each on-street space that's in front of these businesses is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if our system is set up to have an incentive or a rebate for people to live downtown and park downtown, well, I would say success. You've accomplished that. So we have to look at restructuring that dynamic to get those people off the short-term spaces, which is what they're designed for, into the long-term spaces. And another way we're going to do this, so I created the SIP program, Service Industry Parking Program. Again, same issue. People that are working downtown in the kitchens and the bars and the restaurants are parking on street, and that's taking valuable business away from their entities. So the SIP program, currently the way it's structured, is a 50% reduced rate for anybody that works in the service industry downtown to park in a garage. We're looking at possibly eliminating that rate or maybe making it $5 a month, therefore to get people off the street into the long-term parking, allowing more patrons to come downtown and visit these locations.
Thank you. A couple other quick things. I'm very interested in the zone idea, particularly in terms of people moving their cars to a different zone. I think that's going to be a big cultural change, and the more we can, and we certainly have a long timeline for implementation and rolling all of this out, but I think that's going to be one of the probably most significant learning curves in this whole process. Can you talk about the design and approach of that zone?
Yeah, absolutely. So several years ago, we had an independent audit from Drew's office, and one of the findings on that audit was we were unable to effectively enforce time parking zone and people rolling forward, and it was found that we could not effectively enforce that current city code. So we looked at different ways to do that. Currently, you have to move your car 500 feet for 2 hours. So there's really no way for us to fully 100% vet that that person has moved. So that's why we came up, we looked at making it 200 for 6 hours, or 500 for, or just doing one side of the street, or just doing one block and having 24 zones. So what we landed on was this 4-zone. We're going to color code it, put up the correct wayfinding signage that you are on Zone A, which is color blue. And therefore, they know that they have to move to Zone B, or to Zone C, or to Zone D. However, we're also offering a first hour free in every parking garage. So that's a great way to get the people off the street and incentivize them to go into the parking garage. I hope everybody heard that we're eliminating parking meters, we're making free all on street, we're making the first hour free in every parking garage, we're making all parking free on Sunday, and through that whole process, we still end up coming net $200,000 revenue positive each year. So these are huge, life-changing stuff for downtown.
Yeah, these are significant and very patron-friendly, but also employee-friendly as well. And great way to incentivize people coming downtown. I wanted to just follow up on, and these maybe are sidebar, but they align with what the Vice Mayor was talking about. And not seeing as high a traffic in terms of people using transit, we are seeing an increase of cyclists. And I want to make sure that we have enough infrastructure downtown for people who do ride their bikes downtown to be able to park them or lock them.
Yeah.
But whether that's bicycle racks or any space within the garages. And then I would also add to that EV stations. I don't know what the status of electric vehicles is in the city, but I know that's often a question that comes up about, where are those available?
Sure.
I don't know if you can
Thank you, Mayor. I can
elaborate
answer
on
both
either
of
of
those questions. We offer free lockable bike parking in every single parking garage. So we've taken care of that. The second part of your question, as far as EV, we just installed 7 EV chargers located throughout 4 of the parking garages, our main structures. We're not seeing the greatest return on that investment, so we'll have to play that out by looking at over time. We did get a Virginia Clean Cities grant for 7 parking EV chargers. That's great, but it cost me $70,000 to install those $2,000 worth of EV chargers. And the current rate of return, I should make my money back in 72 years. So we'll have to strongly evaluate the future of EV and whether or not it needs to be a federally funded program or a state funded. I'm not quite sure the parking fund can get that. You would be mad at me if I did that rate of return with your investment.
That makes sense. Thank you, and thank you for that update.
Just on that.
Sure, Mr. Paulson.
A little more education in public. I had no idea, and I have an EV myself, and so I think just a little bit more education might help us on that.
Absolutely, and that's why this marketing manager position is so integral to this whole entire study process. This person will get the message out to the city and to the surrounding city and the people coming into the city.
So in terms of timeline, I want to remind everybody, this is really exciting news. Again, thank you for everything. It does not begin tomorrow.
That's
So
correct.
I want to be clear on that. Free parking on Sunday does not begin this Sunday.
That's correct.
There is an implementation process and a rollout process for all of this. So, and I know we'll be working on this between the city manager and you all. Can we talk a little bit about some of the next steps? This is a briefing today. Sometimes when we get briefings, that's to take action at our next council meeting, but I think this is going to be activated over time. So I'll defer to you, Ms. Turner or Mr. Mann, to
absolutely.
just talk us through a little bit through the process.
Sure, thank you. And for the public's knowledge, we're not asking City Council to take any action today. This is just a study. So as we proceed, we can do some of the changes, we can do none of the changes, we can do all of the changes. So over the next few months, we'll start to implement these processes. We're looking at about a 9-month implementation time. So again, just to reiterate what Mayor said, this is not happening place today. This will have to be changed, a lot of city code, We'll have to amend the fee compendium, we'll have to have some resolutions, we'll have to have some items for action, we'll have to work with the attorney's office and the manager's office to get this accomplished. So a little bit at a time, we'll slowly start to implement this over the next 9 months.
Thank you. All right, any other questions from council on this matter?
I have one.
Mr. Nash.
So I'm curious. I was looking at the parking garage occupancy, and I didn't see church garage unless it's under like warehouse garage or something. But I didn't see church listed on there, and I was curious about specifically employees that work within the municipal building, and we know a lot of them park on the street and kind of move every few hours or so. But the feasibility for city employees free parking in the garages and how that impacts bottom line if when you become a city employee during those hours of operation, you're doing your job, you get to park in the garage for free, freeing up that on-street parking or them not having to park in the private lots. So I'm curious.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nash. They can't park for free in the garage. They could park technically for 1 hour free in the garage. But there is an incentive for all City of Roanoke employees, and that's through the FSA, or the ESA, which is Employee Savings Account. So it allows them to put a bucket of money into their accounts to therefore pay for parking, and that gets paid pre-tax. So I'll give you an example. Church Avenue Garage is $80 a month. If an employee were to pay out of that employee savings account, they would only pay $51.68 a month, which is a pretty substantial savings. Now, of course, this depends what tax bracket you're into. So there's a little bit of leeway one way or the other. It could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less. Campbell Garage, for instance, which is a lot of the employees park in Campbell Garage, which is $55, it would take it down to $35 a month. So we currently have about 50 employees who do the pre-tax deduction out of their paycheck, and it takes it right out of their check. So again, part of this marketing manager position will be allowing everybody to know in the city they have this opportunity to pay pre-tax and save some money on monthly parking.
What was the price for Campbell? You said it was 57, then it goes down.
It's 55 now, it would go down to, depending on your tax bracket, at a 22% bracket, it would take it down to 35.53.
Thank you.
Question. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Mann. Mr. Forrester, thank you so much. I will also share with the public, there is a meeting tonight at, is it 7?
6 o'clock, our final public forum.
Public forum tonight, 6 o'clock PM, Berglund Center. Is it Berglund Hall?
Berglund Hall downstairs, yep.
All right, so make sure the public knows about that, and it's a good opportunity for everybody else to hear that or watch this meeting on YouTube later.
Yeah, thank you.
Your choice.
Thank you, council.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. We're going to move now to our next briefing, and Manager, I want to thank you for the quick turnaround on this. So Ms. Turner, I'll let you introduce this briefing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to invite Deputy Chief Crawley to the podium, and he's going to be sharing a briefing on deer culling.
Good morning.
Morning. Welcome.
Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, members of council, City Manager Turner. My presentation will be nearly as in-depth as the parking. Okay, guys? I'll tell you that right now.
There's no demonstration included?
So just real quick, I wanted to just provide some information, some preliminary information about our deer management program that's being run through the police department, and then provide you with some opportunities coming up, and then answer any questions you may have. But the presentation is intended to have some questions. I'm sure there are going to be some things that you guys will want me to go back and research or find some things out, and I'll be able to get those things to Ms. Turner, and that way we'll get you the answers. So just provide some background about our deer, because we all get those emails, phone calls about what we are doing about the deer in Roanoke. And just to be clear, they're not our deer. The deer they belong to the state, right? And so anything that we do with the deer have to be in tune with what the state allows us to do. So again, it's not the state taking those phone calls. It's not the state getting those emails. It is us, right? It's not the faceless state. It is us who's getting those phone calls. But at the end of the day, the deer, those wildlife, they belong to the state. And is the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources has the absolute responsibility of managing the deer population. And some of the data I'm going to give you is going to come straight from the Department of Wildlife Resources. And so some of the data they provide says, you know, under optimum conditions, the deer population can double every year, right? So that is substantial if you think about it, just for our region alone. And what we already know, because we get those complaints about how the deer damage flowers, trees, gardens, and they're eating just about everything in our community right now. So one of the greatest cause of our, increase of deer population is the reduction of hunters. So we've had a reduction of hunters, which means we have an explosion of deer population. And so over the past 30 years, and we go back to 1990 through 2021, we've lost 38% of our registered deer hunters. And it's anticipated by 2030, we'll lose another 32%. So according to the Department of Wildlife Resources, the number one contribution to the increase of deer population is the decrease of registered deer hunters. And so we'll talk about how we've been handling the deer culling program here in the city. Since 2013, we have been having a contractor do all of our deer culling, and so they've been harvesting all the deer since 2013. Our records indicate from 2020 to 2023, we didn't do any of those we didn't have any contractor services being done. So again, if we didn't have any culling done for 3 years, there's an opportunity where that population can increase, double. So we may be experiencing 3 times the population of deer simply because we didn't have any operations being conducted for 3 years. I checked with my staff and asked if anyone knew why we didn't do those operations for those 3 years. And unfortunately, no one currently on staff knew why. So I don't know if it was a situation where we didn't have a contractor who put in for the bid, or if we just didn't have the funds. We just don't have the information readily available to understand why we didn't do those services during those 3 years.
Might be able to shed some light. That's because during that time was COVID, and in order to reduce what we were spending, the management didn't put money into culling.
So another one of our challenges that we've been having since I've been here for the last 2 years are the number of contractors we have available. So when we put out the services 2 years ago to bid, we only had 2 contractors put in for it, who were qualified and available to perform the deer services. It seems to be challenging. Our current contractor is not always willing to start the services as I would like him to do. Let's just make no bones about it. He will only do those services in January. I like him to start a little bit sooner. As soon as the deer season starts, I like to have him out there doing those services. Because again, it's not him getting those, the contractor's not getting the complaints, we're getting those complaints. And so we would much rather him start culling, harvesting deer earlier in the season as opposed to in January. That leads us to our opportunities. So one of the things, as you guys know, I was a police chief for a neighboring jurisdiction for a while. And one of the things that we did, we didn't use a contractor. We used our own employees to do the deer culling. And so when I came in, my first year and found out what we were spending deer culling, one of the things we wanted to look at is I thought we had an opportunity to do it a little bit more effective and probably cost the city save the city a little bit of money. And so one of the things I've talked with Ms. Turner about is initially supplementing our contractor. If we know our contractor won't start to January, maybe we could start our own program in which we could start earlier in the fall. And what that would look like is we would select 6 to 8 sworn officers to participate in our deer culling activities. By using our own trained police officers, we would, again, supplement the contractors. We're not saying we would just completely eliminate contractors, but we would have a little bit more control over what neighborhoods they're utilizing, where those complaints are coming in. Because right now, our last 2 years of deer culling with the contractor, he's been able to perform those services in 8 days. And so if you think about all the complaints we get, he's able to fulfill the contract in 8 days. I feel like we can do a little bit better than that. And again, with our own program, we can improve collaboration with the Department of Wildlife and our contractors and supplement. And then we're a little bit more responsive to the complaints. And so if there is a direly neighborhood, we could do our own assessment. How can we respond a little bit more appropriately as opposed to waiting until January? I know this has been another topic that had came up, and it's urban archery. And again, I've had a little bit of experience. I wrote the ordinance for urban archery a couple years ago. And what that looks like for a community like Roanoke, again, you have to have permission from the state, basically asking to be added to the list of localities with urban archery. We would establish an ordinance governing how that would look for our city, right? Every city needs to look a little bit different, right? I don't think that what Roanoke County's ordinance looks like would work for us for the city of Roanoke. So I think we would have to sit down, have a work session of what that looks like for our community, what we feel like is safe and what we feel like is acceptable. And again, you have to have a state-issued hunting license even to do urban archery. One of the things that we have found with urban archery, like I said, from my experience is there are less archer hunters than there are traditional hunters. And so we're going to be back to the same issue of having less hunters out there available to even do any hunting, even with urban archery program. Unfortunately, there's not the 100 men who are willing to come into the city of Roanoke and kind of take care of our deer, right? That just doesn't exist anymore. The sport of hunting has kind of fallen off the last couple of decades, as the data kind of suggests. And so if we as a city can utilize contractors and our own employees, I think we can be a little bit responsive. And in the long term, whether it's 2 or 3 years, we're able to push out the deer back out to some of the rural areas, right? I don't think it's going to be a situation where we're going to harvest all the deer in the city of Roanoke, but it is an essence of pushing the deer back to rural areas and getting them out of our cities. Some other localities who already have urban archery programs: City of Richmond, Chesapeake, Newport News, like I said, Roanoke County and Salem. One thing about urban archery, and I've talked to Ms. Turner, every community looks at it a little bit differently. I think in the City of Richmond, they issue permits for urban archery on city-owned property, so you do have some control over when those activities are taking place. Things such as size of the plot of the land, right? There are a lot of different rules for urban archery. You don't want the Wild Wild West where folks are just out here shooting bows, right? We have to have some ordinance in place and some guidelines if we were to do that. But at the end of the day, I think there's still going to be an issue where there are just less hunters, registered hunters are out there doing that work. And so if we can, again, kind of force multiplier, utilizing city services with contract services, I think we can at least be a little bit more responsive to our citizens with their complaints. I know that was kind of brief and kind of quick, but if you have any questions, and what I don't have for you today, I'll try to get the information and get it back to you, Ms. Turner.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Crawley. We appreciate it. That was a really helpful overview. You kind of answered some of my preliminary questions. Mr. Hagan.
So I know that this has been brought up with some people. Has there been any safety issues with urban archery in Salem and, I'll use Salem because they're a city, or Richmond, or I apologize. I don't.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And so I've reached out to our representatives with the state locally. We may have different of opinion as he was trying to cite some of the state programs, but nothing specific to Roanoke and our region, right? When he talked about having conflicts with contractors or conflict with sport hunters and city contractors, city employees. And I had to, remind him that I'd been chief of police for 8 years in the city of Salem, and we had 0 issues, right? So he wasn't specifically talking about our region, right? He was just talking about at a statewide, what could happen. And so I've reached out to some folks in Richmond who are over the DEER program, over the law enforcement program, and they have not been very receptive for returning phone calls or emails at this point in time.
Thank you.
So to answer your question,
Yes.
I'm not aware of any conflicts.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Nash?
I have a question. I have, talked with our city attorney about the deer bow hunting, urban archery ordinance for helping us kind of control the deer population in our city. And I think that if we could do a multi-pronged approach and have, our contractor, our law enforcement officers, and urban archers, who, as we know from meeting 2 weeks ago, a gentleman came and said, hey, like urban art, like we're already, hunting deer within city limits. And I communicated with the gentleman that came and spoke before us and some other local hunters. And they all have said the same thing of, we're already doing this. So y'all might as well go ahead and put a system in place because it's already happening. And my question is, when it comes to the contractor, like what makes a contractor qualify or not, what are those qualities that they have to have, or why is it so scarce? Is it a certain amount of, hunters they have available? Is it how they hunt with a bow or a rifle? Like, what does that actual like contractor look like?
And I was not here when the bid went out for those services. Okay. I'm not familiar. Again, I came from a locality that did not use the third-party services. I would imagine it has a lot to do with insurance.
Okay. And with the officers stepping in and utilizing like 6 to 8 of them, would they use bows or would they use police-issued rifles that are perhaps silenced, or what would that look like?
The program I ran before, we used suppressed rifles. Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. And the last thing that I'll say is, as I said, I think the urban archery program could be beneficial. I'm still in favor of it. I think having something structured and on the books is better than having nothing at all, especially if it's already going on. And I think that it could also be a helpful way to promote the sport. And not that, I'm not a hunter. I fish. I don't consider that hunting, but I'm not a hunter. I don't ever think I would go and hunt and shoot anything. But I think that within the city, it could be helpful to promote that since we already have a population who are doing it. So that's it. And this is also a population health threat, because Lyme disease and alpha-gal in the city of Roanoke it is skyrocketing. So it's not just about plants and vegetations and, oh, my daisies. No, it's folks getting seriously sick, dogs as well, and humans alike. So this is also a public health issue that we have to get a hold of. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Ballison was first, I think. Go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to, on that note, I saw that we have to request this by April 1st. So that means this year we wouldn't be able to. We'd have to wait till next year. Okay. And is that, I imagine that's something that you'll get to have fun with?
So we have a draft that's been shared, and Chief Crawley has it, and I would welcome his comments.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Crowley. I would definitely also be supportive of, I think you mentioned wanting to do a workshop on the urban archery program before making any commitments. I could be supportive of that as well for the reasons that Mr. Nash mentioned. I don't think that it's going to fully address the problem, but if we've got, a half dozen people that want to participate and they're doing it anyway, if we could accommodate that and it would help, I'd be supportive of that. I like the idea also of you using 6 to 8 of your sworn officers. It makes me feel a little bit better about, my worry with the urban archery is that you just have like a quality control element of, not wanting to see the animal suffer or move on, not be shot or hit in the target area and then, run half a mile and die on someone else's property. So I like the idea of the 6 to 8 officers. And then, my last question was, do we put out an RFP for that contractor annually, or how does that work? It sounds like we've had some trouble with it. We have one one person? Does that go out every year to?
I think it is, it goes out with the option for renewal.
Right, so I think it's a 3-year contract with an option to renew for a few years. I'd have to pull that contract, but no, we don't go out annually.
Thank you. And my last question was, have you thought about what you would do with the meat or the carcass?
Yeah, so the state requires that it goes to Hunters for the Hungry, and so that harvested meat goes to that program, which I think is donated to different shelters and things of that nature. There's a program in place that the state already regulates on that.
Gotcha. And do we pay for that processing, or is that through that?
That process is paid through the state.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much.
Other questions? I did have a question on culling season. I think maybe you've identified it here under urban archery. These dates, September 5th through October 2nd, January 3rd through March 20th, are those typical calling seasons, or is that would these just be the dedicated dates for urban archery?
So urban archery starts, again, it's going to be the first Saturday in September. So that date always changes. So that's just for this year is what urban archery. And then for regular deer season, it should be the first Saturday in October. So essentially what urban archery allows you is 30 days before normal deer season.
Okay. And then how long does deer season typically run?
Through the end of March.
Okay, so that. All right, I'm just trying to understand the distinction between when urban archery is allowed and when you can cull for deer.
So if we had decided to, as a locality, to also have a rifle in urban archery, our employees would be able to do both, right? So you have an urban archery season, which starts before typical rifle season, and that's when we've been doing our culling, is during rifle season.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I hope did that clear that up for you? Did I confuse you on that?
Yeah.
Urban archery allows you basically 30-day, almost like a 30-day head start.
Well, the reason I ask is because, as these concerns come in, I just want to be clear with the public when we can cull for deer and when we can't. So if somebody's experiencing 40,000 deer in their backyard, can we go out tomorrow and cull them? I think some of this is education and awareness about when we can actually cull deer. So the more we can help communicate that. And to Mr. Nash's point, I think the public health issues are very concerning related to Lyme disease and alpha-gal. And I guess that would be my only other question. I would presume that if a deer is carrying this disease, it would not go to be processed. There's a vetting or...
It is from the contractor, yes. And in addition, there is a out-of-season permit that I would assume the city could apply to the state for, if that's probably what you're asking. Those are all things we could also address during a work session if we need to. But the state does offer an out-of-season permit.
Well, I like this multifaceted approach, and I really appreciate you bringing forward this idea of the 6 to 8 sworn officers to allow us to have a little more control and monitoring over the situation internally. So I think other questions? All right, thank you, DC Crawley. We appreciate it. Those are all of our briefings this morning. We are going to recess our council meeting until 2:00 p.m. for a number of closed meetings in the council's conference room. Thank you all for being here this morning.